So hello Trevor, today I am with a new amazing guy. Maybe you know him, he's the best-selling author of The 12, and his last book is The Power of the 12. He's William Gladstone. He is with me, one of the best-selling author and also a publisher. You will love him, he's next to me. So hello William.
Hello, wonderful to see you, David.
How are you today?
Wonderful, it's a beautiful day here in Southern California.
Yeah,
it's a beach day.
Yeah, and I love, it is my favorite place in the world. I didn't...
Except for Paris.
Yeah, Paris, I prefer Paris. I have a lot of questions for you, and I would like to know more your first book, The 12. Why did you write this book, and yeah, why did you write it?
Well, the better question is, why did my life evolve in such a way that the book could be written?
Great questions.
Because everything that happens in The 12 is based on reality. It's a novel, but it's based on reality.
Yeah.
It's based on a very unusual reality that I had to experience, including going around the world for Rod Serling, making In Search of Ancient Mysteries, when I was younger than you.
Wow.
And a long time ago. And I had all of these interesting experiences, including a near-death experience, which revealed to me the hidden meaning of my own life and purpose. And it was literally to find the 12. And so I wrote a novel in fictional form about the 12. And the purpose of the 12 is very similar to the ancient Kabbalistic belief in the 36 righteous souls upon whom the destiny of our planet depends. But 36 characters would have been too many. 12 I could handle. So I basically took that theme, combined it with my own experiences, and wrote the novel The 12. Yeah. Originally, the novel The 12 was supposed to climax in the year 2000 and to be about the second coming of Christ. But I didn't get it done in time. So I had to think, what is the real time that this book was meant to be published? And it turned out to be the Mayan calendar, December 21st, 2012. And it was only after I had made that decision, after I wrote the first draft of the book, that I learned that my own personal destiny, including my actual date of birth, was directly related to the energy of the end of the Mayan calendar.
It's amazing.
So it was very interesting how the book came about. And then there were things in the book that I wrote that I didn't even know were important until after the book was published. For example, when I was in India, I had a very unusual out-of-body experience traveling to a different universe. And when I returned, the clock said 4:44. I didn't know 4:44 was a sacred number for the Hindu monks who, when they meditate, always choose 4:44 to start their meditations.
Oh, it's amazing.
So there were many things like that happened in the writing of the book, including on Christmas Eve, I believe it was 2008 when I was writing the book, I stepped away from the computer for 10 or 15 minutes, and when I came back, an entire page of numbers and letters had been written by the computer itself. And I didn't have anything to do with it. And I called some people and said, what is this about? Has this ever happened? And it's called auto-writing, and there have been some recorded cases of this. While I was on the phone trying to get an explanation, the computer wrote another half page, and then it stopped. And I kept this page, and I still to this day do not know the meaning of those words and numbers. Some of the names were names of people I knew, but I didn't recognize the pattern in the numbers, and some of the names were names that I didn't know. So
what are your explanations?
I think that the other side is trying to communicate through and with me information that's vital for really the survival of our planet. I don't think it's about me. I think it's about our entire species and the role that human beings are meant to be playing at this particular moment. Interestingly, I also have a background as an anthropologist.
Yeah, it is my next question.
At Harvard University, and so I had already studied the Mayan calendar, and I'd spent time with indigenous people. And so when the novel came to fruition, I started to remember things that I had forgotten about what indigenous peoples had told me. And then I interviewed some Mayan shaman about, well, what is this? Everybody here thinks the Mayan calendar says it's the end of the world. They said, not at all. It's the end of a cycle. And
the end of
one
this
cycle ends, a new cycle begins. And that's really what the message of both my new novel, The Power of 12, as well as The 12 is about. It's about what is this new cycle? What are we here for? Why are we here at this particular time? And what actions do we need to take to ensure that 1,000 years from now, there's still a planet Earth with human beings on it that are living comfortable, enjoyable lives.
It's great. I would love to have your point of view of our future.
Well, our future is very much up in the air. There is no guarantee. I mean, our immediate futures, for the next 10, 20, even 30 years.
Yeah, or 30 years.
But beyond the 30-year window, it's pretty clear from the scientific evidence, unless something extraordinary happens, such as the development of cold fusion where you can have energy without any extraction of natural resources, we're going to run out of fuel. And in the process of running out of fuel, we will have polluted the planet to such a degree that global warming will be so catastrophic that we could create a second, what they call Permian extinction, which happened 250 million years ago, where 95% of all life on planet Earth disappeared. We could actually create the conditions that not only destroy ourselves, but virtually all life on planet Earth. So that's the negative scenario. The positive scenario, of course, is that we do actually start thinking about our role as co-creators of the future with our responsibilities, not just to our immediate survival, but the survival of future generations and the survival of other living species on our planet, and start to take actions which are still possible that will prevent catastrophic decline and that could actually result in more joyful, more creative, and more abundant living. Not more abundant in the sense of material consumption. Right now, we're so focused on material consumption that we think the definition of a good life is whoever has the most toys, can eat steak and lobster every night or whatever they are.
What is your vision of?
We're changing. I mean, and frankly, some of the older generation, which unfortunately I have to include myself, it really doesn't matter that much. I mean, if I became a vegetarian or didn't, it's very small impact. But in terms of future generations, in terms of the 3 billion people under 15, most of them probably should be pursuing vegetarian diet because it's much more sustainable. The production of meat is a very costly way to maintain life on planet Earth. That's just one small thing. But then you multiply that by 100 different decisions that people need to make in terms of how they spend their leisure time, how they wish to live, whether they need to have a life that's dependent upon having their own automobile. If you look at this, I mean, these are things that most of us in developed countries, Europe, United States, take for granted. But the reality is it may not be viable to continue the level of consumption, and what we consider essential individual freedoms that we take for granted may actually not be viable when we're looking at the whole of what is necessary. Because the pollution that we create doesn't just affect us, it affects everyone on planet Earth. And we have to take that into account.
So I was talking with Denis Whiteley, and he's 80 years old. He said to us that in China, they are trying to do the same as the Occidental side, and the same mistakes, but
I was just in China. I was actually a co-organizer of a very important conference in Hangzhou, China. The number 4 highest ranking member of the Communist Party was there, and many of the dignitaries of China, as well as mayors from the United States and scientists from all over the world, specifically on the topic which they chose of ecological civilization. The Chinese that are aware of ecology as an issue are positing that once we passed the industrial age, we went into the information age, and now we are emerging, if we are to survive, into the ecological age. And the ecological age has to do with circular economy where we recycle things. It has to do with zero growth. Many, many things that actually the mainstream Chinese government and people are not interested in at all at this time, because the majority of people in China are striving to duplicate what we in the West accomplished 40, 50, in some cases 70, 80 years ago of economic independence, economic mobility. And it's a very hard situation for the Chinese, because on the one hand they look at us and they say, well, this isn't fair. You had all these goodies, you had all these toys, you had all these cars, and now you're telling us that we can't have these? And the answer, unfortunately, may be yes, we're telling you can't have these because you're going to pollute and choke your own livelihood as well as that of the rest of the world. So it's a very awkward situation when you're looking at a country like China, which also does have traditions of harmony and beauty and aesthetic balance. And these are actually the values that we need to resuscitate, not just in China, but throughout the world. So there are at least individuals and groups within China who want to be leaders in what they're calling ecological civilization. So even if it's only dialogue at this point in time and doesn't result in immediate policy changes, it's good to have this dialogue starting now.
Yeah, and I would love to know something, because a lot of people, they know that we have to change, but they are thinking, oh, I'm too small. If I don't change, it's okay. So according to you, what could be the actions for each individual?
Well, I think each individual is a separate individual case. Every single human being has to make their own decision. For example, I'm not perfect. I have been habituated. I eat meat, I drive fast cars, I play golf. None of these activities, from an ecological point of view, are activities that I would applaud or suggest that every human being participate in. In my own case, if I stop doing these things, it's not necessarily going to make a big difference, and I'm only one person. But in terms of setting direction for other people, it could be important. And I have other things I can do which don't conflict with my habits, if you will, and what I'm used to as my normal life, that can make an ecological difference. And I think every one of us needs to look at our life, and we need to make decisions. And when possible, we need to make decisions that go beyond our immediate comfort zone. And that's not easy. It's not easy for me, and it's not easy for the people that are listening to this. But we have to start, and even if it's only one small thing, just, okay, so I eat meat. Maybe I'll eat a little less meat. Maybe when I have a chance to carpool, I'll carpool. Maybe the next car I get will be a Tesla rather than a BMW, unless BMW has good electronic cars.
And do you have some goals about that for the next few years for you?
For me personally, yeah. I'm really taking it as it comes. I mean, my contribution is much more in where I do have influence. I have many authors that I represent. I've been able to place important books about ecology that will get out, that can have an influence, hopefully, on millions of people. So, yes, as an agent, I'm spending more of my work time focused on the kinds of books that can make a positive difference in a big way. And for me, I think that's more important than if I eat meat or don't eat meat or make some of these other small changes that I should probably make from a moral and ethical point of view, but I may not be ready to make from a personal point of view. But I think every one of us is in a different position. If I were working in a large corporation where I had influence on policies, well, then I think that's where that person should focus. What policy changes can they make within their company that are going to make a big difference? If I were just a student, for example, in a school, I would, and many students have done this, what can they do to increase recycling? What can they do to imbue more ecological wisdom into the curriculum for the other students? So I think there's things that all of us can do no matter where we are. And I don't think it's about judging people harshly because they're not green all the time. I think, that's a nice goal, but I think realistically it's going to take some time. But if we do things well, it's very possible 50 years from now, 90% of the human population will automatically, because it's comfortable for them and it's what they've been programmed to do, be living lives that are green, that are sustainable. So I'm
maybe
more focused on that, on the future.
The main thing we have to do maybe it is about education.
Absolutely.
For the next generation.
I think education, information is the start. I can't say, David, I don't think the way you're behaving is appropriate. You have to change your behavior. You're going to say, who's he to tell me? He doesn't know my conflicts. He doesn't know why I'm doing this. Whereas if I'm just saying, look, here's information. This is what happens when human beings act in this way. This is what happens when human beings act in that way. And the information, if you get it enough times and you get it in ways that are trustworthy, will, I think, have a major impact on young people.
Yeah, and when you are saying that, I am wondering, because I will be a dad, and I can say to my son, for example, you have to do that, but I am wondering if I am not doing that, it will be the same as China.
Exactly.
He will say me,
walk the talk, as they say.
Yeah.
You have to change your own behavior, and it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And the younger you are, the easier it is to meet that challenge. I mean, I have many friends who are set in their ways, and you know, I would not necessarily say that they're good models. Doesn't mean they're not good people. And I think that you have to have compassion even for people who are not behaving in ways that we would like our children and our future grandchildren to behave. I think that you have to have balance
Great.
rather than just judgment.
You have a job as a more than a job. It is a passion for you to be an agent. I would like to. What is an agent for people?
Well, in the case of books, being a literary agent, I'm an advocate for book authors. So authors come to me and they say, "I have an idea for a book. What do you think?" And sometimes I say, "Well, I think it's a good idea, but you're not very famous. I don't think I can sell your book." Or, "That's a really good idea. I think I can sell your book." Like most literary agents, I'm more comfortable with authors who are already established.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier to place an established author than a new author. But my role is to negotiate the contracts and to try to create a good marriage between the editor and the author to have the best book, and to also be able to discern which publishing company is likely to do the best marketing and promotion for a particular book.
The work of an agent, the author come with his book, right?
Yeah.
Finished, without.
Actually, for nonfiction, not finished. I
Yeah.
actually prefer just a book proposal, and then I can pitch the idea and the concept. And the
With
idea and
him.
the concept and the author's
For
platform
nonfiction?
for nonfiction is more important. But you're right, with a fiction, you better come with a finished book unless you're Stephen King or Gresham or someone with a big track record.
So the author come with his goals, his ideas, and you talk with you, and you finish the book, and then you choose the publisher,
Yeah,
and
we
you do
know all the publishers in the United
all
States.
the marketing.
And then through my international agent, we know all the publishers throughout the world. So we deal in every country in the world.
So just to have an idea, when for a book sale to take $10, there is a publisher,
Yeah,
the agent, and the author.
right.
Usually, what are the
Well, it depends so much. Every situation is different.
Yeah.
It depends whether it's hardcover, whether it's ebook, whether it's paperback book. Every single one of those books has a different royalty rate. As an agent, we make 15% of what the author makes. And the author, as a rule, makes between 10 and 15% of the retail price of a book if it's hardcover, and usually 6 to 8% of the retail price if it's paperback. And just recently, but not with all publishers, we've been able to raise the ebook royalty to 25% for the author.
So the publisher has the higher.
But traditionally, the publisher had the highest cost. They're paying for the printing of the book, they're paying for the marketing. of the
For
book.
everything.
But in today's world, and this is why publishing is changing so quickly, the publisher is bringing less and less to the party. They're not able to sell the book any more effectively in some cases than an individual author, particularly when we're talking about ebooks. What does a publisher do to sell a book online that an individual can't
Nothing.
do? Very little. I wouldn't say nothing. They do some things. There's some ads they can buy. But the important ingredient still is bookstores. An individual cannot, as a rule, get their books into the bookstores in the United States
Without a publisher.
without a publisher. But, and that was very, very important, not long ago, bookstores represented 100% of sales, or retail stores. Then Amazon came along and online started to represent 25 to 30% of sales. Now ebooks have come along to represent another 20 to 25% of sales. So the actual retail sales of books is down to about 50%. So if you can get 100% of your ebook sales and you can still get your book sold online, maybe it's not that important to have a book publisher. So things are changing. I, of course, am committed to the book publishing model with printed books. And I think that, fortunately for me, for at least another 5 or 10 years, that model will still be viable. But
Yeah.
it's changing rapidly.
And for someone as an expert, the people you are working with, like Eckhart Tolle or Greg Scott Reed, maybe it has more impact to have a hardcover book.
It
than
definitely has more impact, and you will be able to, if you're an established author, when you're with a major book publisher, have money spent on marketing that is a great benefit. They'll put the book, if they spend enough money, in the front of the bookstores. Even if people end up going online or buying the ebook, in many cases, they will be aware of the book because they saw the book in the window of the bookstore. So that's where there still is value. For example, we have bookstores in airports, and those are the most coveted space in the United States for books because it's free advertising, but it's not free. The reality is, in many cases, a publisher has to pay as much as $6 for every book in an airport bookstore.
Wow.
But there's value, and as an individual, you would never be able to get that space. Even the big publishers have to compete for that space because they, some bookstores are very small, the kiosks in the airports, and they might only have 40 or 50 books.
Just to understand, when you have a publisher, can you sell the book alone online?
Yes, but very few publishers do, because then they would alienate Amazon and Barnes & Noble, which have big, and other independent bookstores which have their own websites. So traditionally, publishers have not taken the role of wanting to sell the books direct, even from their own websites. They've taken the position that they're there to promote their partners. So they'd rather make a little less on every book and have the partners push the book and sell more books.
Okay, right. I understand that.
But a small publisher, sometimes they'll push very much to sell the books directly because they're not selling that many.
Okay. With the time, you have a kind of expertise and experience to feel, I don't know how to say that, to feel what is maybe the next bestseller.
Well, it's really intuition, and it's an intuitive sense. And in my case, it has much more to do with the people than the writing. And for example, I know you just interviewed Jake Ducey. Jake is not someone that really had access to a major publisher, because at the time he came to me, he was 19, completely unknown, and his book was kind of outrageous on the level that how can a 19-year-old write an autobiography? I mean, they haven't lived that much. So I did, make a couple of phone calls. He very much had hoped that he would be published by Hay House, and I play golf with the CEO of Hay House.
Hay House,
we're
it's
good
great.
friends, and it's a great publishing company. And Jake had actually even met Louise, the founder of the company.
Yeah, I contacted him.
And the door was open, but it didn't stay open. I mean, I discussed it, and they said, Bill, we're really publishing big name authors now. Most of the authors that we publish have hundreds of thousands of followers, have sold at least tens of thousands of their previous books. That's why we have Balboa Press. It's perfect for someone like Jake. Just let him go to Balboa Press, and if he sells 10,000 or more copies, we'll have this discussion then. Well, in that particular case, Jake was a little offended. He said, I'm ready now. I could go. I said, well, Jake, we have another way. So we actually became his publisher in this case. And because he is so dedicated, and it was more him than the book. The book, I think, is good, but Jake is really great. I mean, he's really amazing. He's so dedicated, he's so focused, and he's good at promoting, which is very important today, and he's good at promoting quickly.
His own book.
His own book.
How he did that?
Well, we only published in April, but I think we're going back for a second printing with the physical book, so, it may not sound like a lot, but 5,000 copies for a first-time author in 2 months, it's a lot. It's good. It's a very good beginning. And I think he sold at least another 3,000 or 4,000 ebooks. So this time next year, maybe 20,000 books, which would be very, very good, would be in the top 5% of all books published. And this is someone who had no background. First book.
According to you, what are the main things he did?
Because there's a good message to the book. It is a good story. It is well written. It's a good book. But the real key is that Jake is absolutely focused and dedicated every minute of every day to marketing his book. So he's doing videos out on YouTube. He's meeting with other authors. He's going to farmers market. He's selling the book door to door. He's having his friends sell the book door to door. He's just, doing whatever he can. He's planning on going to universities where they won't even pay him to speak just so he can get exposure and sell the book. So he has the time, the energy, and the ability to inspire other people, particularly young people. And I think because of that, he's going to be very successful as an author.
And just to understand why he's doing that, the fact that his book become a bestseller will be
it'll change his life. It'll enable him to achieve his dream, which is to influence millions of people. That's what his goal in life is.
Okay, so the book is not to get money first.
Well, he needs the money so he can do what he wants to do. But
just to understand.
The money is secondary to his passion which is really, he had an awakening at a very young age.
Yeah.
And he felt that he was here for a reason, and that reason was to communicate with his generation as to the necessity of changing the way his generation looks at the world, to get away from this focus on personal success, personal aggrandizement. He was headed to be a basketball star. You know, you make a lot of money as a basketball star, and you can live very well. But he felt, in the end, if he pursued that dream, he wouldn't be happy. And so he's finding another way to fulfill what he thinks is his true destiny.
And the fact that his book becomes a kind of bestseller, he settled down as an expert in this field, right?
Yeah, he'll become a motivational speaker, which he already is.
Yeah.
He will get invited back to the colleges in the future, and hopefully in the future they'll actually pay him to go there, and he'll be able to do what he wants to do on a very large scale.
So the book is a big door
Opener.
big openers of opportunities.
Yeah, if he didn't have a book, none of these opportunities would be happening for him.
Okay, it's amazing.
Yeah, so it makes a difference. So it's good, and you know,
it makes me think about what I have to do.
Yeah, well, it makes, you know, like, you know, it's one thing, like, people think, and of course, you know, you represent Eckhart Tolle and you get $1 million or more, and then the book sells 5 million copies. It makes you feel good, and you get a lot of money, and you can do things with money. But it actually gives you almost more joy when you take somebody who nobody has ever heard of, and people start paying attention, and you see how his life is so transformed. And in the process, he's going to transform a lot of other lives. So it's equally rewarding. But of course, as an agent with employees, everyone needs salary, health benefits. Yeah. You can't just represent unknown authors, because the majority of them take a long time to develop. So you need to balance.
And so, do you see common points between each bestsellers?
Yes, the common point is the passion of the author and the sincerity of the message of the book.
Like
Eckhart, for example, because they're very different. Like, I couldn't imagine two people more different than Eckhart and Jake. And it's not to say Jake is anywhere close to Eckhart's level of success. But what's true about each of them is they're totally honest in their book. They're totally committed to the message in their book, in the way they live their lives, in the way they promote, or in Eckhart's case, doesn't promote his book. Eckhart is really a phenomenon that he's one of the few authors who, except for when he did the event with Oprah, does almost no promotion whatsoever for his books.
Wow. And it's one of the most inspirational books in this century.
Because part of it is about letting go of the ego. So he's totally let go of the ego. So when you meet him, you're aware, this is what it means to let go of your ego.
So maybe the first thing we have to understand that we have to walk the talk.
You have to walk the talk, no matter what your book is. I mean, if you're doing a book about jumping out of planes, you better be the best in the world at jumping out of planes. You know, whatever your topic is, you better really understand your topic and really be dedicated to see the importance of it.
And maybe whatever what we are doing, if we are parents, teachers.
Exactly. That's why I have books on soul parenting.
Wow, what is it?
Soul parenting is parenting soul to soul. You have a soul, your child has a soul, not worrying so much about what other parenting books tell you, but really on the soul level, what is your child needing? Why is your child here? On what level is your child here to teach you to fulfill your soul's higher destiny? And then in exchange, how do you fulfill the higher destiny of your child's soul? So that's just one book. Annie Burns.
Yeah, it's great. I love that.
It's a great one. Unfortunately, we haven't sold 100,000 copies yet. It's still, but what I'm saying is every book has a purpose, and the author who writes a good book is successful whether the book sells 1,000 copies or 1,000,000 copies. It's not
because
just about the number. Because they're able to express something that they know is true for them, and even if it's only 1,000 or 5,000 who grasp the book and understand the message, that's 5,000 or 1,000 people that have been changed by one book.
Yeah,
that's big.
So you are saying we have to focus on what change we could make with this message, and not how many people I would reach.
Well, both are important. I mean, when I'm negotiating, like I negotiated a deal today, and unfortunately, and it's an established author, they're offering about half as much money as we would like, because they said the numbers aren't there. The last book didn't sell. So the numbers do matter. But,
yeah, because the book is finished.
Well, yeah. Well, not just because the book is finished, but I mean, for an author, once an author starts selling, well, you get your own expectations. So, and everything's relative. So, you know, if you're, I was joking at a writers' conference a couple of years ago. I said, yeah, you know, business is tough, but we did 4 six-figure deals in the last month. And everybody on the panel, you know, 6 figures, that's hundreds of thousands. They look at me and say, how'd you do that? It's such a tight market. You know, everyone's paying less. And I said, oh, it's easy. These authors used to get 7 figures. And it's true. Everything's relative. So I have authors, you know, even a author recently got $150,000 advance. Well, that sounds good, but not when the author got $300,000 or $400,000 on the previous book. So everything is relative, but once you're at a certain level, it's hard to go back. You're disappointed, and then you have to start thinking, well, if I'm only going to make $50,000 or $100,000 on a book, is it worth writing? Whereas you take someone new, $50,000, they'll pay me $50,000 to write a book. I'm in heaven. So it really depends where you are in your cycle and your career and your life.
Yeah, I think so. I am writing a book about my journey and about self-confidence because I was shy. If I would like to help...
You don't seem shy. You were shy.
Yeah, a lot. I was sick every week. And I learned how to improve myself.
Yeah.
If I would like to help my agent, I don't have now, but if I would like to help him to find the best publisher, what are the main things I have to keep in mind?
Become very famous.
Yeah.
You need to become very famous. And then it becomes easy for your agent. Because if, I mean, you're...
But how do you explain or show to your publisher he is famous?
Well,
because I can say that.
No, but you can't just say it. You have to be it. You have to, you know... Like
what are the...
it's statistics. It's very simple. So you're going to launch these interviews on a website.
Yeah.
And you're going to be in most of the videos.
Yeah.
And hopefully, a year from now, you'll be able to say, 10 million people visited my website. Now you're famous, and we know 10 million people have seen your face. Know your name. Okay, let's go to town. If you only get 10,000 people, well, that's not enough.
Do you have some life lessons you would like to share to youth?
Life lessons.
What do you learn from your experience?
I think there's a famous quote from the baseball player, Yogi Berra. I was always a big baseball fan, Yankee fan, and Yogi Berra was a great catcher. And he probably has 100 sayings. I think he even did a book of yogiisms. One of them was something about don't look back, the past may be gaining on you. And I would say it's more important to look forward in what you know, including in terms of ecology, in terms of mistakes we may have made in our life. You can't undo a mistake. It's done.
Yeah.
But you can take this moment and you can make decisions that are going to make things better in the future. So I think the most important thing is to focus on the present and the future. Learn from your mistakes in the past, but don't dwell on them. We've all made mistakes, no matter how successful. Then the other thing I would say that's really important is imagination. And because, you know, you can go, particularly today, you can go on the internet and you can find any fact you want. But what we really need are creative, imaginative people who are going to look at a situation and instead of saying, oh, it's hopeless, say, maybe we could do this.
It's possible.
And maybe this is possible. And in the end, the most joy I think you get in life is from creativity and imagination. So it's something that's good to nurture in all of us, in ourselves and in others. But I think that you do have to be flexible going forward in life. I think the world of 50 years from now is going to be very, very different. If you look at even life 50 years ago, it's very different today than it was 50 years ago. But the amount of change we're going to have in the next 50 years will be 100 times more. And I right now can't even really imagine what life is going to be like. But I do know this, it will not be pleasant if we don't change drastically many of the human behavior modes that we just accept as, well, that's the way it is. We have to start thinking differently.
Yeah.
And we have the resources. This planet is still beautiful.
Yeah,
this
I
still
see that.
has unbelievable virgin territory. I mean, it's hard to believe because there's so many people, 7 billion people. But there's still, I've been in the Amazon, I've been, you know, in exotic locations in Alaska. We still have a lot of land. We still have a lot of open space. We need to preserve all of this, and we need to find ways for human beings to enjoy and feel powerful that don't detract from the planet itself.
Mm.
And that don't detract from other human beings. There really is enough. I mean, if we think of ourselves as competing with each other all the time, we're doomed. It's just because then you never have enough, because no matter what you have, well, I have to have more. I have to have more guns. I have to have more energy. I have to have more money. I have to have more oil.
More.
Whatever it is, I'm in a race to get more. And that race
Are killing
there's a wonderful song by Modern English. I used to watch the race, and the human race long gone by, because that race is doomed. It's doomed. The way that we have traditionally thought about success as individuals, as families, as societies, as nation states, it's over. You cannot imagine any country living well if the entire world is not living well. It will not work. We have to change our own definition of what is success.
Great, I love that.
And it's true. It's not trying to be moral or altruistic. It's just factual. Because when you have a world that's completely interconnected, as our world is, you cannot thrive. I mean, when things were more isolated, when economic systems were separated, you could be successful over here while another part of the world suffered. You can't do that anymore today. If one part of the world is suffering, eventually the entire world is suffering.
I love that. One of my next goals is to build a one-year school for students at the age of 18 years old. And let's consider we build a program together. Mm-hmm. In 1 year, I would like to help them to have the foundations of success, happiness, communications, and after this 1 year, they are ready to build their life.
But you want to create tremendous variety. You want to create situations where people can fail. Failure is actually a very important part of success. You learn literally more from failure than from success. And you want to give individuals both experiences. You want people to know what it is to fail. You want people to know what it is to succeed. So in the details, I don't want to, speculate on what the specific courses should be, but there should be tremendous variety, and there should be breadth of the curriculum, and it should be organized in such a way that there's plenty of room for individual experimentation that will allow for successes as well as failures.
So not only course, but maybe project, challenge.
I think independent study, if you will, projects where you get, I think the more you can do to have young people and old people working together on projects. The concept of mentoring, I think, is very important. I think that, you can learn from people who've sort of been there, done that.
Yeah.
One of the most important things I do in my work, an author will come to me with an idea, and I'll be able to immediately tell them, well, somebody tried to do that and failed very badly because, and then, that information, and then they go in a different direction.
And do you include the mark?
Mark?
The
grading? Give grades to people? I actually do.
In this kind of school, do you think I have to
to grade people? Well, yes and no. I mean, I've experienced both. I mean, I happen to be a very good student, so I like the grading because I'd always get A's and A pluses, and that made me feel superior to everyone else. But I think it depends on the subject. I mean, in things that are black and white, like math, yes,
you can.
I think you absolutely have to give grades, because until you master a field, you can't measure you can't go to the next. And I think it's also true in practical things, learning a foreign language, for example. I think you can very easily measure someone's proficiency in a language, and it's appropriate to give grades. Now, there's other fields where it's more nebulous, and I think that the criteria between, an A and a B is less clear, and maybe we just go with pass-fail. They've got a sufficient comprehension to move on to the next, or they don't. But the grading in and of itself is not as important as people believe. It's more what in the interior of a human being has progressed. And you really know in most cases, if you care about a subject, if you've mastered it or not. And it's that internal sense of mastery and your self-grade, if you will, that ultimately is more important.
So maybe every field would need creativity. We don't need to grade people? For example, projects, for example.
Or you might do a combination where you have some outside grading, but you also allow the individuals to grade themselves, and their peers can grade them. You know, and
Could be
it's
fun.
more feedback. I would call it more feedback. I
Then-
mean, when it works well, what is a grade? It's just feedback. You're ready for the next. You really are superior.
What is good in what you're doing and what you could improve.
Right, exactly. So when it's used properly, I think, you know, a lot of it in today's society has so much to do with just material gain. So we use grades. Okay, well, they're not as good as these guys, so they get to go to the elite school. Oh, they're in the elite school. They're not as good as the other guys, so they're the elite of the elite. They're going to get the $100,000 a year jobs. You know, we use grades as a way of filtering people out, and that's not necessarily the best use of education.
Okay, so I have a question. It is a serious question, and I ask you to stay serious, please.
Okay.
How to become a loser?
How to become a loser?
Yeah.
Oh, it's easy to become a loser. Be selfish.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the quickest way to become a loser. Every time you make a mistake, get angry with yourself. That'll get you to be a loser.
Criticize.
faster. Yeah, self-criticism, that'll go far to helping you become a loser. Cultivate your mean qualities. Be mean. The more mean you are, the faster you're going to be a loser.
Wow.
Never give credit to anyone else. Whenever anything works, take all the credit.
Criticize
yourself.
also.
Oh, and criticize the others. That's a quick way to become a loser. And when something good happens for somebody else, ignore it. Never give them praise or any kind of appreciation.
Be
And
jealous.
Be a real good loser.
Wow, it's great. I love that. Thank you very much.